Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director at Fincantieri from Italy. Marianne Demarche, Chief Executive Officer, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Middle East, Africa from SWIFT. And of course, Dr. S. J. Shankar, Minister for External Affairs, India, moderated by Palki Sharma, Managing Editor, First Post. My colleagues will guide you on the seating arrangement.
Sir, sir, this is just. You have a mic or this is yours?
Palki, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. Namaskar. There's a running joke in the news media that Elon Musk is the co-president of the United States. It is not true, but it is relevant to our session and our discussion because we are talking about the intersection between governments and businesses and how they shape our world. We are in the middle of a major geopolitical realignment, and corporate entities play a crucial role here. You see Western companies banding up with Western governments. You see Chinese companies banding up with the Chinese regime. So it's not just country versus country anymore. It is a country plus its companies versus others. And this is not necessarily new. You may have heard of a certain East India company and you know how that played out. But in today's context, how will this new equation impact big power play and big power rivalries? That's what we'll discuss. We have a crack panel here. Good morning to all of you. Joel Kaplan, let me start with you. The US administration, the new US administration, prefers fewer social media regulations, even when it comes to fact checks. And companies like Meta have responded to this by ending third party fact checking. But in Europe, social media regulation is a top priority. So, is that going to be the future of platforms like Meta, where you don't have a uniform policy or principle, you just operate or respond to the country that you're operating in?
Well, first of all, Palki, thank you for having me on the panel. It's an honor to be here with the Honorable Minister and the other august guests. Um, I mean, there is obviously been a change in administration in Washington, and I would say the Trump administration does have a very different orientation towards uh, social media companies, but towards American companies and American tech in particular than the prior administration did. And while it's true that President Trump and his administration are much more interested in expanding the freedom of expression online than the prior administration was. I actually think that the bigger change, at least that we're experiencing as a company and as a sector, is that we have an administration in Washington that is interested in promoting American technology, advancing Western values in technology, and honestly defending American tech companies against what they perceive to be a discriminatory regulation targeted at them. That's something we've seen particularly in the EU over the last number of years, and I think it is a change and one that we're experiencing and are candidly quite pleased about, to have an administration that's prepared to defend American values online and American companies again against what we and they perceive to be unfair targeting. Um, when it comes to the changes that we've made recently around fact checking, um, we found that we know that people don't want to see misinformation on our platforms. It's not good for us. It's not good for them. But the system that we had put in place a number of years ago to deal with a third-party fact-checking program just proved to be too prone to political and partisan bias, and had destroyed at least as much trust and credibility as it had built. And so we decided to replace that system with another approach that leverages the many different voices and people and diverse perspectives on our platform, a system called Community Notes, which is sort of like you can imagine, think about Wikipedia and think about the way other platforms have relied on community-based systems to provide more context and more information. We think that's going to be really promising.
But will you stick to that even in countries where there's a repressive regime or stifling of free speech or human rights?
Well, we're starting it in the United States. It's rolling out in the next couple of weeks. We're going to take our time to make sure that we understand how it's working and that we get it right, and then we'll look to expand to other countries. And of course, we'll take into consideration the different information ecosystems and news ecosystems that exist in different markets and different countries. And we'll make sure that we do it deliberately and carefully.
Pierroberto Folgiero, protectionism clearly is creeping up across the world, with the US becoming the unexpected flag bearer of it. How much of an impact will these trade and tariff barriers / wars have on trade volume and global trade?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this invitation, and I'm very honored to be at the same panel with the minister. But let me say that what we are living is the geopolitics of shipbuilding. You know, we are shipbuilders. We build ships in 5 continents. But all of a sudden, the world realized the geopolitical power of shipbuilding. And you know, Western countries abandoned shipbuilding something like 20 years ago. So the vast majority of ships in terms of tonnage are built in between China and Korea. So all Western countries are rethinking the strategic importance of this industry. US, first of all, and China is somehow having a long-term view on the importance of the maritime economy, starting from shipbuilding as a building block, moving to logistic business, all the way to owning port infrastructure. Now it's time to rebalance all this. What remains in Western countries is technology-driven shipbuilding. So those kind of ships in which the payload is making the difference. So when the cost of a ship is driven by cost of the steel, cost of the labor, and cost of the energy, it was lost. When these 3 components accounts for 80%, is lost. When the payload is the most important part of the total, then we can be still relevant. So this is this new era. We believe that this know-how in technology-driven shipbuilding is the way to think of the future shipbuilding. So that's why we are very interested in joining forces through a common geopolitical platform, but joining forces in order to go for a kind of renaissance of shipbuilding in a way that is instrumental to this new geopolitical order. So this is our focus, and we believe this is the way ahead.
I'll come to shipbuilding in particular in a bit. Let me get Marianne Dimarli in the conversation. SWIFT describes itself as a neutral entity with a global character. So I would say this model is based on trust and consistency. Yet SWIFT has become a tool of Western foreign policy, as seen in the war in Ukraine with Russian banks being cut off. Would you say that undermines your claims of neutrality?
Well, thank you. Good morning to all, and thanks for your question. Well, indeed, I mean, SWIFT is a global cooperative. We are headquartered in Belgium, so under EU law. but we are present in 200, more than 200 countries. We are connecting the world, the economic and financial world, actually, through more than 11,500 financial institutions all across the world, including, of course, in India. And we are also completely currency agnostic, supporting, 150 currencies and so forth. So this is our global nature. We are really keen on being seen as a digital infrastructure, as a public good. Indeed, I mean, we are so based in Europe. There has been sanctions imposed on us and other companies, which we had to apply. But we are really committed to, maintain and to show to the world our global nature. We are evolving also our corporate governance to make it more inclusive. And we are, as I said, I mean, we are here, we are a non-profit company. Okay. And as a non-profit company, we're not maximizing on revenue. What we are maximizing on is to ensure that we maximize the value of what we offer to the global ecosystem. We are here to try to resolve some complex challenges, so building the future of tomorrow, or the future of finance of tomorrow. Given what you just said, I mean, geopolitical tensions, the global growth of digitization, embracement of digitization, which all these can have pros and cons, but can also increase fragmentation.
But can you still claim to be neutral, was my question.
Yeah, we are. I mean, we are a neutral company, but we have to be headquartered somewhere. And, so we are incorporated in Europe. It's all the banks in the world have decided, it was 100 banks at the time, now it's 11,500, have decided to incorporate this organization in Europe, and we have to follow European law. But as a company, we have a board which is, very representative of many different regions. We are evolving that corporate governance to be even more neutral and representative of all parts of the world. We are present in all the world, and what is really important. It's not necessarily this part, if I may. What is important is that we really need in these geopolitical tensions, new proliferation of payment systems here and there, be it instant payment systems, central bank digital currencies, other systems that want to be built, fine. I mean, it's good and it gives opportunity. But if they are not connected and interoperable, you risk financial fragmentation. And financial fragmentation is really impacting global growth. There's many research. The last one is from the Economist that has measured that if financial fragmentation, and I will come back on that to explain why, financial fragmentation can hit the global growth, global GDP, up to 6% of GDP in 2030, if fragmentation accelerates. 280 million jobs would not materialize because of this, and no single country would benefit from it, in particular those that rely on financial flows. And why is that? Because we need to realize that the economy is not just policies and stuff. It's just, also pipelines, right. Systems that are interconnected, that are the backbone of, the economy, the arteries of economy. And if this is not functioning well, the economy suffers.
Right. I would have asked you, Dr. Jaishankar, if we'll help SWIFT find a new headquarters. But on a more serious note, I want to ask you, historically, India has shied away from weaponizing trade and financial institutions. And you yourself have said that we are not in favor of national sanctions. But with the way the landscape is changing, and you've heard all the other players speak, do you think that trade barriers and tariffs and tech sanctions or tech restrictions have a place in our foreign policy, or should have a place in our foreign policy?
Before I come to that, I just want to say, I can see there are really three capitalists sitting on this side, but I'm impressed to be seen as a commissar. It's a term from my youth, and I was quite amused to see it being used in this age, but I take it as a compliment. Now, your point, tariffs, sanctions, what's happening, export controls. I think whether we would like it or not, they are a reality. Countries use them. In fact, if one looks at the last decade, I would say we have seen a much greater weaponization of pretty much any kind of capability or any kind of economic activity. It could be financial flows, it could be energy supplies, it could be technology. This is the reality of the world. So, since I take the world as it is, we have to negotiate our way through that and see, how best we can do for our own country. Because at the end of the day, for a government, for a commissar of the government, you fight for your business. You fight for your business because you're fighting for your employment. You're fighting for your comprehensive national power, of which business makes a very important contribution. And I think today the lines, dividing different domains have eroded. And I think overall, if you see in international relations, I think it's a less restrained culture today than it was, say, a decade ago. And that's something we all need to factor in.
Does it bother you, the blurring lines?
I'm not, I wouldn't say it would bother me because I've seen its evolution. I mean, I just accept it as part of the playing conditions. So I mean, it's part of the assumptions. It's part of the challenge, and I would deal with it. Ideally, even leverage it where I can.
Joel Kaplan, the internet was supposed to be borderless, a utopian free space where ideas and thoughts flowed freely. But now there are more and more firewalls being imposed by various regimes. Is that the future we should brace for a fragmented space divided by geopolitical lines?
Well, I don't think that that's a future that we should accept. And I think there are real opportunities, even as we speak, to make progress in ensuring that's not the case. And let me give an example of an area that we're quite focused on, as is the government of India. At the Paris AI Summit a month or so ago, Prime Minister Modi very vocally embraced the idea of open source AI, and that for company like ours, that was very gratifying because Meta is going to spend in 2025 something on the order of 60 to 65 billion dollars investing in AI to build foundational models, the most powerful, advanced, performative foundational models, which we will then make available for free to developers around the world to build on top of, to fine tune, to modify, to customize, to apply their local language data sets. And a country that is really thriving in taking advantage of that opportunity is India. And the reason why I think that's important to your question is this is the way in which we can ensure that the shared values of like the great democracies in the world are what is embedded in the technology of the future. Because we know that it's not just American tech companies like Meta that are making these kind of investments and that have the ability to develop these sort of open source technologies in AI. We saw a month or so ago with the release of DeepSeek out of China that the Chinese are fierce competitors in this area, and they understand that this is one of the technological battlefields of the future. And it's really important that the decision be made as to whether there's going to be an open source standard, a global open source standard that emerges. If you think about past technological advances, you had an open source model in Linux and in Android. And I think we can all be grateful that Linux was a Finnish company and Android was out of an American company, and that the American values of openness, or the shared Western values and democratic values of openness and transparency, are embedded in that technology. That's a choice that we get to make. And the regulatory environment that countries like India and the United States decide on will determine whether the future is built on these shared democratic values or on a different alternative that's emanating out of China. I'm really optimistic about what I see when I come to India, and it makes me think we can avoid the kind of future that you described.
I see how China has emerged as a villain, and TikTok is an example of that. The allegation is that TikTok shares data with the Chinese regime, as I'm sure a lot of other Chinese companies do. But here's my issue: American companies do the exact same thing. In the last 10 years, Meta, Apple, and Google handed over data from 3.1 million accounts to the US government. Meta's data sharing is up by 675% in this time. So basically, American companies get away with doing the very same thing by virtue of being American.
I mean, respectfully, that's just not remotely the same thing. Of course, companies like our companies reply to lawful orders to protect people from child sexual exploitation, from sex trafficking, from terrorism. I don't think that's inconsistent with democratic values. I don't think that's what we see in China. And honestly, I'd be surprised if that's a shared view.
Pier Roberto Folgiero, every company is a product of the the country it operates in, and that sometimes also creates an uneven playing field. You mentioned shipbuilding. China is set to give around $15 billion every year in subsidies, and I'm not even counting the steel subsidies, which is a significant and important component. Now, Western governments and companies are investigating this unfair practice. Would you say they were caught napping at the wheel? It's been happening for many, many years.
But again, first of all, let me tell you that I'm very happy to participate to this panel because I'm the only hardware guy. Because now it's time for software code writing. But in order to host software, you need hardware producer. So let me play the game of the heavy industry around the table. Let me say that in this new geopolitical landscape, we need to go for a kind of reindustrialization. That's what is expected to happen in Western countries. So shortening certain supply chain and go back to production. And we have to tell young people that production is a beautiful job. In the old times, if you're not good at school, you will go to the shipyard. Now we have to tell even our brilliant young people that production is back, and you need to go and cope with hardware, not only software. So that's the game I'm gonna play. So this is very important. Obviously, we need to modernize shipbuilding.
Yeah.
So in order to be attractive and in order to reindustrialize Western countries, we need to offer a job that is as robotized as possible, as automated as possible. That's what we are doing in our shipyard. So yes, you need tariff in order to protect yourself, but at the same time, you need to reindustrialize yourself. And again, it comes from the culture of young people. It starts from there. Then it's a matter of rethinking industrial processes, injecting as much as new technologies as possible. Again, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of robotization. Basically, we have to implement in the shipbuilding something similar to what happened in the automotive sectors 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Obviously, mutatis mutandis, because there are a lot of we work in open field, so we don't work in chains, but there is a lot to do, a lot to do. So I wouldn't put not only the accent on the regulatory framework, I would like also to put the accent on the reindustrialization, from the culture of young people all the way to the processes, all the way to manufacturing scheme. And I believe in this respect, India can play a very important role, simply because in this renaissance of shipbuilding, India can start from engineering capabilities, coping engineering capabilities, and coupling, engineering capabilities with manufacturing of components, so supply chain, fabrication, and manufacturing of key systems that need to be installed in a ship, and third, availability of labor. So it's very rare to have these three massive skills in the same geography, and on top of it, there is a big domestic demand. So these existing condition precedents are associated with a domestic demand. And I believe that this is a long journey because, again, heavy industry is not software. So you need to be, slow biorhythms. That's the name of the game. But it's a process that is starting. And we are more than happy being the biggest Western shipbuilder. We are more than happy to get along with this renaissance of shipbuilding and putting our technological expertise, because again, the ship of the future is not a hull made of steel, it's a system of systems. That's the concept of technological ships. So we are more than happy to take all these historical roots of the country and associate with our geopolitical bloc expertise and joining forces.
Right. Mariana Demar, Russia and China are said to be exploring alternatives to SWIFT, and that is 24% of the global economy breaking away from your network. Do you think they can mount an effective challenge to SWIFT? Also, SWIFT was envisioned as part of a global financial infrastructure, and that was underpinned by a globalist US and the near monopoly of the dollar, both of which cannot be assured anymore in the given circumstances. So, do you think that they have a future, or do you think that the world will explore alternatives?
Yeah, thanks. It's a very important question. Thank you. Well, actually, is what I was saying. I mean, you have geopolitical on one side, you have technological innovations on the other side. For instance, central bank digital currencies or a new way of moving value across the board. So you have different factors that drive fragmentation. Fragmentation meaning, indeed, I mean, some financial systems that may at some point be completely disconnected. And that will happen. I mean, it's already happening. And that's a fact of life, I would say. But what is our view is that, global trade over the past has been a fundamental driver of growth. And how has it been? Because of and thanks to the integrated financial system we have built all together. So a secure, trusted, a really reliable, but also connected and interoperable, as I said, the arteries and backbones of the financial economy. So our role in this will be, and due to the fact that fragmentation hurts badly the global economy, our role will be to maintain the glue of the ecosystem. Okay, we are interconnecting the financial ecosystem. We want to continue to do it with potentially these systems that, okay, there may be there's the Russian system, there's the Chinese system, which is not a competitor, by the way. It's just relying on SWIFT for the international part of the RMB. But there will be other platforms like central bank digital currencies. How do you want to a business to send payment to another business or another person in a country with a central bank digital currency which is natively created, but we're not connected. So our role will be to make sure that we interconnect to the different systems, if the systems want it, and to ensure that the global trade, global flows continue to happen, and that we support global growth. So that will be important in the future, indeed.
Right. Dr. Jay Shankar, how do you see the weaponization of things that were intended to be global goods like SWIFT or social media or telecom? Do you think that undermines trust in these institutions? And does it push India then to explore alternatives, perhaps homegrown ones?
Well, there are different ways of dealing with weaponization. One is to stay on the right side of the weapon. So, you don't get hit, others do. But the look, here's the reality. The world today makes business decisions, factoring in national security in a manner in which it did not do so before, especially in the digital era. And two of them here, in fact, all of them here, in some way, are deeply involved in that. In the digital era, I think it's not just about cost, it is about comfort, it is about trust. So if you are today looking at this serious, at a strategic level, the business conversations, you keep hearing resilience, reliability, trust, transparency. So you want to do business more and more with those with whom you are secure. And your earlier point that everybody has, every partner offers some risks. Yes, but you would rather take the risks with those where your interests are not contradictory, then the risks are not that great, rather than those with whom your interests could clash or do clash. So I would argue today that countries, in a way, need a kind of a macro business strategy. And certainly, when you look at India, when we look at the world today, we see, we are involved right now in three big trade negotiations with the EU, with the UK, and now with the United States. These are our growth markets. These are our technology partners. This is where people go for education. This is where people go for tourism. These are, in many ways, our connectivity partners. They are our strategic partners. So when we make choices, it's no longer just efficiency and cost. I think there are non economic factors which I think increasingly influence business decisions. Sometimes you can be put in a situation where we say, let me devise something alternative because that is a compulsion of the day. But I would argue that's an aberration rather than than some kind of strategic desire to replace a particular system. I mean, if we can make the current system work for us, it's the smarter thing to do.
Right. Before I open it to the audience, I want to ask you one last question, and this is something that we've discussed internally as well. You see, foreign policy was designed to deal with countries, but today companies are sometimes more powerful than countries. For instance, you have Elon Musk and Starlink. With one flip of the switch, they can change the course of the war in Ukraine. Do you think foreign policy then needs to evolve, or do you leave it to regulators and financial institutions?
No, one, historically, that's not entirely the case. I would remind you of a company called East India Company, which became so big. Uh, but it's a valid point. I mean, the market cap of many companies today would probably entitle some of them, I don't know, maybe even to be part of the G20. So this is, again, a reality we have to deal with. So sometimes, you deal with them in tandem with the government. Sometimes you deal with them directly, but you have to deal with them. I mean, this is the necessity in my business.
Right. We'll open it to the audience. We can take a couple of questions, I suppose.
Ma'am, here.
Ma'am,
Whoever
this
gets
side.
the mic.
Ma'am, this side.
Greetings. I am Bhavna, here at the left side. Yes. My question is to Dr. S. Jaishankar, sir. Sir, as economic warfare reshapes global power structure, how is India leveraging its diplomatic and economic strengths to not only mitigate these strategies and pressures, but also emerge as a key architect of a more balanced and a resilient global order? Thank you.
In a way, I had addressed some of that, which is we have global interest today. If you look at our key trade partners, they're spread all over the world. They are very diverse. So just like we have a way of working with different countries politically, we obviously do the same economically. But again, I stress that all countries are not the same. And the digital era will bring out that differential more sharply. At the end of the day, it does matter where our data goes. Who looks at our data, who processes it, who develops the AI based on our data. We can't be agnostic in the digital era. So it's not the same as the manufacturing era. In the manufacturing era, beyond a point, it didn't matter where the product came from. You can't extrapolate that proposition into the digital era. So I would argue that the answer to your question would be like portfolio management. You diversify it as much as you can, but at the end of the day, there will be comforts, there will be the reliability factor, there will be issues of trust. And that is why some of these FTAs we are engaged with today with the EU, with UK, USA matter so much.
Greetings, Dr. Jaishankar. Over here, towards right. Towards right. Over here. Hello, my name is Shreyas. I work as a business analyst at Deloitte, and I have a question to you, Dr. Jaishankar. Considering the fact that United States is pulling out of organizations like WHO, Paris Agreement, do you think they're trying to establish a new world order? And if yes, what role can India play in being the leader of Global South?
I think if your question is what the US is doing, you should ask the Americans, not me. If you ask me what we should be doing,
Yeah.
I mean, we should be doing many things, including engaging the Americans and engaging the global South. Our strategy is pretty, I mean, it's been discussed in other sessions, it's pretty obvious. But our effort is really to really maximize our options to, since I'm on a business panel, to increase our turnover, to improve our technology. And, we are on a strong growth trajectory. And as a business, as a country which has decades of growth ahead, that's what we should be planning for. Now, different countries will make decisions, that's their prerogative. We have to factor it in while making our calculations. I can't tell some other country that don't do this because it's not convenient to me. That's their call, not mine.
Thank you.
We'll take one question from the Raisina Young Fellows. Yes, yes, and for the rest of the panel as well.
I'm from China and I'm working for a European think tank. I have one question for Mr. Kaplan. So Meta CEO like Mark Zuckerberg has reportedly shown interest in assessing the Chinese market for many years. And what makes news headlines lately is that in 2015, the company developed a system that would accommodate Chinese content regulations, including features to restrict certain content and potentially share user data. Does this mean that for global tech companies like Meta, the stated democratic value and user privacy could be compromised for market access? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So Mark was pretty clear for a number of years, probably starting about a decade ago, that for a company whose mission was to connect the world, you couldn't really accomplish that mission and leave out a country with over 1 billion people. And so he was very interested in being able to offer our services in China. And we did spend a couple of years discussing with the Chinese government what it would take for us to be allowed to offer our services. And as Mark explained in a speech at Georgetown University in 2019, we ultimately were not able to come to agreement in doing the things that would be necessary for us to offer our services in China, the things that are demanded of companies that do offer their services in China, many of which are sort of well-known household names. And what Mark said in 2019 is that actually freed us up to be less encumbered in defending and talking about freedom of expression. And so at the end of the day, that's a better position for us to be in, one where we can continue to defend and talk about the values that Facebook was founded on and its roots in free expression.
Dr. Jaishankar, I represent the financial investors worldwide.
We
on the
wanted
right
the Raisina Young Fellows, or do we wrap?
Just a last question, ma'am.
Ma'am,
We have 30 seconds. We'll take one student, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insights. The panel has established.
You have to be louder.
Oh,
come closer to the mic.
It's better?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your insights. The panel has established the close relation between innovation, competitiveness, and national security. A cornerstone connecting all that is national data, which for innovation needs to be leveraged in the cloud, but for national security needs to be protected as good as possible. Hosting such data on a cloud on foreign hyperscalers appears to make nations at least a bit prone to geopolitical threats. So I was wondering, how does the Indian government plan to expand state security in the digital realm? Or put it differently, how do you define digital sovereignty in the current geopolitical context? Thank you.
I'm guessing it's for you.
Well, look, I think people realize today the value of data, and yes, ideally, there's business or innovation at a global level, which looks again very neutral. But the reality, is very different. There is national competition in a way. There are businesses which profit from access to data. So I think India must play to its strength. And what are its strengths? A huge amount of data because there's a large population, an enormously diverse society. So even within those numbers, you get actually a great, very wide spectrum of data and innovation culture. So we have to make the most of it. And at the end of the day, both as a commissar and potentially as a capitalist, I would say I'm in it for me. I would max it for myself. I'm not here to develop global business. I'm here to develop Indian business.
Ma'am, can I last
I think that's a good note to end on. The time's up. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your thoughts, and thank you for being such a wonderful audience.